What I'm going to talk about is a discussion topic, and it's something that the developers of the pencil code, and it's basically up to you whether you count yourself as one or not, need to figure out. And the basic question is, should we move away from CVS as a revision control system to something more modern? The reason this is coming up now, or one reason, is that Nordita has moved from Denmark to Sweden. So in the long run, the midterm run, I guess, the code should be hosted here in Sweden, which changes the URL under which you download it via CVS anyway, even if we stick with CVS. So if we want to change something, if we have to break backwards compatibility in a sense, then this is the time now to break it completely. So what I want to present here are just some uncombed thoughts about a few revision control systems that I think are plausible candidates. If you have a favorite revision control system I don't mention, then I'm happy to get input from you. I know a few of you have used Subversion. I haven't used Subversion, I've only heard about it. And so I'll also expect or hope to get some input there on Subversion from you. So the likely candidates for hosting the pencil code from my point of view, and that's everybody can have a different view on that, is first of all CVS. That's what we are using right now, so we wouldn't have to change, we wouldn't have to use anything to learn anything new. At the same time, CVS is considered to be relatively old. To show its age, it has a number of limitations, some of which are annoying unless you get really used to them, which we probably are by now. And it is in the class of centralized revision control systems. The most plausible replacement for CVS for us, as it has been for a number of open source projects, would be Subversion, or in short SVN, which was created with the aim of being the successor, actually to CVS. It is actively developed, which is not necessarily the case with CVS. It removes some of the limitations that CVS has, but not some of the others. And it also is a centralized revision control system. So if we move to Subversion, basically we are playing in the same league, and we don't have to change our mental models. There is a number of more or less popular distributed revision control systems, and the one that I think might be suitable for the pencil code would be Mercurial. This is a relatively new project, also not so new that you wouldn't trust it, or you would want to wait for a few years before it settles down. It is very actively developed. It is decentralized. So is Darks, which I like very much. Other than Mercurial, I have been using Darks, but I put it here in square brackets because there are issues that just make even people on Darks maybe not use it on larger projects. The pencil code is probably not that large a project, but still, if it turns out you have a workflow that is unfortunate in a certain sense, and you probably only find out when it's too late, then you are in for trouble.
What is decentralized?
I'm talking about that. Well, okay, I can explain that now. It's basically for a centralized revision control system, you have one central repository, and you cannot commit a version. You cannot do many things without accessing that central repository. Currently, that's the CVS repository in Denmark. It could become the Subversion repository here at Anova. Decentralized revision control systems work completely differently, although you can use them in a similar manner. There, basically, you clone a repository of your choice on your laptop, say, or on your desktop, and then you have a repository on your own for you. And then you can decide to push changes to another repository. Wasn't the battery. Or somebody else can decide to pull changes from any of your repositories. And that just requires a certain different way of thinking about the whole thing. And then there's and nobody tells me. Patrick, where are you?
I was laughing.
Laughing is not okay. Can you help me, Patrick?
What?
Look at this. Then there is Git, whatever, however you pronounce that, GIT, which is used for and has been developed for the Linux kernel. It has some popularity because of that, but and people by now are using it for very different sorts of things. But I think it's probably too featureful and too complex for us. We want something simple, and I think in the distributed world that would be Darks or Mercurial. Okay, just a brief characterization. Well, first of all, let me demonstrate you that CVS is somehow outdated. If I... Okay, at least I know that password. If I ever get to enter it, very good. Don't even have to. If I Google for CVS, the first thing you find is a pharmacy. So this project is clearly not popular enough. That was a joke, by the way. Okay. CVS is centralized. As I said, there is one central repository. You need to have access to that repository to commit changes, and in the case of CVS, actually to do lots of things. You can clone the repository in read-only mode. This is how we handle the anonymous CVS repository. But still, it's a clone, and you cannot write back changes that you submitted to that clone to the other repository. There is one central repository, and the structure is very clear. Okay, there's a number of problems. There's repeated security issues which are related to the fact that the code base for CVS seems to be somewhat in disorder, and nobody really wants to fix it because it's a very big program by now. On the other hand, it's used in many places. It will not go away anytime soon, and any important bugs still get fixed because it is used in many places. So the situation is not like we have to leave the thinking trip. One big plus is that CVS is available for probably all the platforms we are ever interested in. I even got a binary for some weird Japanese machines where you couldn't read the manuals because they were probably machine translated from Japanese. But still, CVS could be installed there, and it works, except for the base firewall they have, but that's a different story. Also, talking about firewalls, if the access to the repository is purely HTTP, then normally you do not have firewall issues because that's the one outgoing port that is normally open on most machines. So,
but CVS, we don't use the HTTP.
No, that's why that's a problem with a potential problem with CVS, but it's not a problem with. It's not a problem with those derivative control systems that can serve through HTTP. Yeah.
Is the P server, message, is that considered to be safe?
No.
On the package,
it's not as bad as what some people say, but I think it sends a password in clear text over the net, and every now and then there's that other force. Many people, many system administrators run the P server in a change root jail just because it has a really bad reputation.
That's my problem also, that when you go to the systems administrator and say you want to do this, they don't allow you to. It's one annoying thing with the P server.
Yes, that's in many cases that would also be resolved by having a server that runs that serves through HTTP. Although I guess on some on big iron machines you would still not be allowed to run that. But on the threshold to getting that past the system administrator is way lower. Okay, availability is a big plus for CVS. One thing that is quite convenient at times is that you can check out a subtree of a repository. You don't have to get the whole repository. You can just get one subdirectory or with all its subdirectories, or if you don't want those, you don't have to get those. So you can basically fragment a big project, which is very, very convenient for some workflows at least. And we can easily configure users without bothering the system administrator, which is an important thing. If we need accounts to set up, to be set up on that machine for people that the system administrator has never seen, that's always going to be difficult. And even if you can convince the system administrator, these people are never around when you need them, in case you never realize that. So for CVS, we can just do this on our own. That's also a big plus. Okay, Subversion. Subversion tries to replace CVS and tries to remedy some of the shortcomings of CVS. It's also a centralized revision control system, so same mindset still works. There would be a central repository, and to commit changes you have to connect to that central repository. You have to first update your copy if there have been changes, and then you can commit your changes. It's way newer than CVS, also probably the second oldest of the 3 or 4 I mentioned here. On open source repositories like SourceForge, there is not only a CVS server, there is also a Subversion server. There might even be Mercurial there, I'm not sure. And many projects have actually moved from CVS to Subversion, so we would be in good company. And it's quite actively developed. I think Subversion is available for most of the platforms we might be interested in, but I haven't really checked. For some of the more obscure platforms, that's probably not the case, but Subversion has been around for long enough for it to be available for the most popular platforms. With Subversion, one thing that is an improvement over CVS is that you have an offline copy of, well, I think it's not really the repository, but of the latest state of the repository, which is bad if you are really short in disk space on your laptop, but which is nice if you want to do things like CVS diff, Subversion diff. If you want to see what did you change, you don't have to talk to the server each time you do that. Or with CVS, you normally would do something like CVS update to see whether you have changed, well, to see which files you have changed, or maybe update -n if you don't want to really pull stuff on the server. That again connects to the server. So if you're offline, it doesn't work. If you're on a slow connection, it takes way longer than it has to, and that's remedied with Subversion. Well, as I said, as for Subversion, I'm expecting to get some input from you. It probably allows checking out a subtree of a repository. True? Okay. You can use CVS-style keywords where you have revision number, author, date, or whatever, expanded to the corresponding where you have this placeholder expanded to the corresponding information from the repository. You have to activate that explicitly, but you can do that as the switches are provided, and that's also something that makes working with Subversion, it allows us to work with Subversion in a way very similar to how we work with CVS. There's different ways of serving the repository content, of allowing people to get the latest updates and stuff. And there is a server, SVN server, which again can be, I think that was copy and paste. But the idea is well, this part is the idea is the same. You have a specialized server running with a special port which the firewalls might block, and well, it has its own protocol, and you can set up users without needing the system administrator. And the password is not sent in clear text over the network, but it's in clear text on the server. I'm not sure why or what that's good for. It's not a big deal unless people are using the same password for CVS as for anything else. But then for our repository, most people are using a suboptimal password anyway, which everybody knows. You can also serve via HTTP. Well, if you have Apache running on the server, and a machine that would be a server for a revision control system would likely be a network server anyway, so Apache would most likely be running there. Then the authentication is HTTP authentication, which I think means that there is one password file in the main directory where the repository is located. And if you have write access to that password file, you can add new passwords, use the HTTP password command or whatever. So basically, one just needs to convince the system administrator that we need write access, or asking us write access to that one file, and then again, for that way of serving the repository, we would be able to set up users on our own, if I understand that correctly. And then we could also use SSH. And I'll talk about that in connection with Mercurial, where there's this is one of the recommended ways of serving, and apparently we can get similar functionality with that. What is different from CVS? What do we gain if we change or lose? Maybe. There is a move or rename command. Actually, it's the same thing. You can do move or rename, and some people, including myself, consider that a bad thing if you can have different names for the same number. Anyway, so you can do subversion, move, old file name, new file name, and then the new file name, the file with the new name will have the whole history that it had before it was renamed. That's different from CVS, where you have to remove the old file from the repository, and you have to add the new file, and then you have to figure out that when that occurred and which file has been renamed into what, unless you have a reasonable log message which can help you with that. And then you have to follow one track of history, and then you have to jump to the other one, and that's really annoying. I rarely do that. If I'm at the end of one log, then I'm just giving up on it. So that's one of the improvements certainly over CVS that all these newer revision control systems provide. Also, there's atomic commits. So if you change 5 files and then you do subversion commit -m, fixed all the problems from the last 5 years, then this will be one change that stretches over 5 files. It won't be 5 separate changes to 5 separate files. So the organization of changes is better in a sense. So, but by now, if you want to roll back a change like that covers several files, but you don't want to. Well, no, if you want to do that, you basically have to do it by date, because the revision numbers for different files are different, and so on. In the version they are not. In the version you have global revision number. Well, I made that one up, but I think this is not a very implausible number. Slightly implausible, I guess. But I guess these numbers must grow large very quickly. But if somebody runs the pencil code and says, I have a problem, describes a problem, we find we can't reproduce the problem, we would just ask, which revision are you running? And then somewhere at the beginning of the output of the code, there would be the revision number printed. We don't need the long list of all the .f90 files with all the versions, but we would just check out that revision, and it's uniquely identified, and then we would know for sure that we are using the same revision as that person.
Can I maybe just ask you if we have modified our own files and we do an update, then of course we keep having some of our own files being our own modifications. It will merge the other changes into that, and there will be no change in that respect. So we can operate for say several days on our own versions without any need to check in.
That's the same as it was before.
Exactly
So there's nothing different there. Yeah.
And then
which of course means that just knowing the version number is not enough if you have local changes.
So suppose then, for example, we want to check in something, but some of the files we actually don't want to check in. What do we need to do in that case? I mean,
the same thing as before. You do CVS commit and then file names, the ones you want to check in.
That can't be true then, because you're saying there's only one version.
Your local changes are your local changes. If they are not in the repository, then they don't have an official version number, and they are just your business. Like with CVS.
So if you commit 3 files in one step, and then you want just to read done one file, is it possible?
No, because you have atomic commits, and you committed. If you commit stuff in one command line, then you consider that to be one change.
So you always have to think about if it's good to make all 3 in one.
You obviously shouldn't combine completely disparate changes in one commit,
which is a good practice anyway.
Because it makes you document what you're doing and not just latest changes on my laptop and that's it. But you can still do that, so you don't lose anything.
But how does this global revision number go together with the fact that you can check out substreams or not?
I guess the subtree, if you really can check out the subtree has a global revision number as well. The server knows where the root of the repository is, and anything below that would have the global revision number, I guess. So, more questions? Okay. One thing that is incompatible with CVS is the way the version handles branches, or the way it is suggested that one does branches. There you basically have all the branches in parallel directories on the server, and you just check out the main version and not the branches if you don't want the branches. So if you want to migrate between CVS and Subversion and you have many branches, that probably will lead to incompatibility. We don't use branches that much that I think that would be a major problem, but it's really handled differently. Okay, my favorite revision control system that I recommend to nobody to use is darks. I'm talking about darks here mainly because I'm guessing that many of these features are also present in Mercurial. I haven't used Mercurial, but if we were to go for a distributed revision control system, I think Mercurial would be the better candidate, probably the best one. Mercurial, okay, darks is called by many supposed to be the easiest revision control system, version control system, because it has quite a limited number of commands and things are as simple as they can be. Mercurial has copied some of the features of Dark, so that's at least some approximation to that. It is decentralized, so wherever you go, if you have your laptop with you, you can, and normally would, carry your own repo or your repository or your own version of the repository with you. It is relatively new, well, probably about the age that Mercurial is. It is actively developed. It is only available for a limited number of platforms because it's written in Haskell and it depends on that Flask or Haskell compiler. So I think even some Solaris boxes are problematic. I guess in the end you can find a static binary for Solaris, but Linux, Solaris, Windows, which is well supported by Dark, Mac OS X is probably the number of platforms on where you can be reasonably sure that you find a binary. Anything else, AI, X, or whatever, is dubious, is doubtful. You cannot check out subtrees. You have to check out the full repository, which means that if you use revision control also for your own configuration files, your dot files, your text files, and so on, you will probably want to at least keep the text files separate from the dot files, because otherwise you always have to check out both. And limits flexibility. There are no unique version numbers, and that's not really a shortcoming of Darks. That's the very nature of a distributed revision control system, because if a different repository can have different patches from the one that you have, and then there is no way to linearly enumerate the versions that are in different repositories because they are different. And on the other hand, different repositories can contain the same patches, but they can have received them in a different order. And so there cannot be a single a linear enumeration scheme for distributed version control. On the other hand, one can use pre-commit and post-commit hooks that are just user-definable functions in order to construct some unique identifier. I think that's not normal. Let's see. Okay, it's built into Darks in some sense. It's not very human readable, but still, it is somehow there. So you can still identify a repository in a way that, such that somebody else can check out exactly that version of the repository. There's no direct support for expansion of CVS keywords, but again using pre-commit or post-commit hooks, and I would have to think to decide which you need. One could cook up something that does that effectively. Darks uses a very elegant way of transferring patches, and that's not so relevant here because Mercurial doesn't do that, but I find the idea quite nice. There is a Darks send command which allows you to send patches, that is, changes to the code, via email. And so if there is a central repository in quotation marks, if there is a reference repository, then one person, I guess Axel, would be in charge of that repository. He would get the patches by email. He would set up his .procmail RC such that the trusted contributors to the pencil code, the patches from the trusted contributors would automatically get handed on to the repository and incorporated in the main repository. But everybody else could also send a patch, and then Axel can review the patch and in his mailer decide to apply that patch or to drop the patch, which is nice. And some projects get contributions through that mechanism that they normally probably would not have received.